Hello, I'm Robert, fact-checking and science blogging, and this time I'm going to help you with this scary idea that you see so often in blog posts, sometimes even news stories, the idea that humans could go extinct. And it could, if we were, you can imagine that it could be true of some extraterrestrials. Suppose that we were like rainforest frogs that require a high level of humidity, a very narrow temperature range, and there's a very slight change in that temperature and we're going to go extinct. Then in some, Proxima Centauri or something, there's a little civilization that's been set up by these little frogs with better hands than our frogs have, and they're hopping around and they've made their civilization, and then they start burning coal, and then their planet starts heating up and there's nowhere else for them to survive on their planet. And you could imagine a very vulnerable civilization like that. But we are not like rainforest frogs. We are a very resilient species. And so this shows some of the places that humans can live naturally without any technology, and then they've added artificial as well: grassland, forest, shrubland, desert, rocky areas, e.g. inland cliffs, mountain peaks, savanna. There are many different habitats here, and not including all of them. The seashore was a very common habitat for early man. And if you look at the things we can eat, then we can eat animals, we can eat frogs, as I just said, we can eat insects, we can eat shellfish, roots, fruit, nuts, seeds, the actual plants themselves, for some plants like sugarcane or whatever, and we can eat. There's very little we can't eat. We're an omnivore, and we're not like frogs that can only eat insects, and or whatever it is, and we can eat. And then added to that, we can cultivate. So we can cultivate, and you can eat mushrooms or whatever. We can cultivate our crops, and we're so good at cultivation that we would, if needs be able to cultivate at the bottom of the sea using artificial lighting. We can even cultivate crops on the moon. We know how to do it. So it's absolutely ridiculous, in my view, for anyone to suggest that there can be a future in which human beings go extinct because there's nothing they can eat on the earth and there's no way they can cultivate their crops. It simply doesn't make the blindest bit of sense. As I said, we have now reached the stage in the 21st century where, if needs be, we would be able to make a living on the moon. We know how to do it. It would be very expensive and a big project. We could have seasteading is already being experimented with. That's far easier, which is habitats floating in the sea that only use seawater and sunlight and a little bit of rock. And then even easier, already being done, then greenhouses in deserts that convert the desert into habitats that humans can live by using seawater, which then is evaporated by sunlight. And so, the idea that we can't make, it's impossible for us to make the world uninhabitable for humans. Even if the entire world somehow could be made into a desert, it would still be well habitable by using saltwater greenhouses and lots of other techniques. And there isn't any possibility that climate change isn't going to make the world into a desert. It makes some semi-arid areas into desert. Areas that already just got very little vegetation can go to having no vegetation. Areas with a lot of vegetation could go to having less vegetation. And sometimes it goes the other way, it gets wetter. And in the higher latitudes, then you actually get more growing in the upper latitudes. And the longer growing season, the permafrost is, as it's melting, then you're getting more plants growing there. And then further down south, the season is growing for longer. So you actually, and at the moment, we are reforesting all the continents except South America and to a certain extent Africa. There's more forest there now than there was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And then the actual temperature, so that's the basics. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about each bit of this. So that's the basics. Human beings, very, very resilient. We're not like fragile rainforest frogs. We're not a rainforest frog civilization. We are a hominid civilization, and one of the most adaptable of all the hominids, even without technology. And we were marching around all over the world even before we had much at all by way of technology. Then we found clothes, a way to make clothes and to light fires and live in caves. Then we could live all the way up to the Arctic. And then with the simplest tools we can live like Eskimos with ice dwellings. You wouldn't be able to live like that without technology. Human beings are not a natural inhabitant of the Arctic. You wouldn't be able to survive at all if you didn't have clothes and buildings. But we find it very easy to live in all sorts of different places, all the way through to the Kalahari Desert, which is somewhat more natural for us. But the early hominids wouldn't be able to live in the Kalahari Desert. You have to learn how to dig up the roots and eat them and use certain tools and so on. So we can live almost anywhere with the most rudimentary technology. So no, there's absolutely no risk of human extinction. And then people talk about, oh, but the world's going to get too hot for humans. That is absolute ridiculous nonsense. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is the present day, and this is business as usual, which is far greater warming than is possible indeed anymore. I think it's basically ruled out as impossible, because business as usual was, despite the name, wasn't really as usual. It meant rapidly increasing our coal use to 5 times what we have now by 2100. We're obviously going the other way. It's pretty steady. It's going down. I think it's not going down quite yet. We expect it to peak in sometime in the 2020s. And fossil fuel is likely to peak sometime around 2020s or 2030s as well. And the renewables are just taking off like amazingly, and undercut fossil fuels almost everywhere. So business as usual is impossible. Business as usual just can't happen. And even with that, it would take until the year 3000, and it starts at the year 3000. They don't know when it would happen exactly. Some time from year 3000 onwards, then all the ice in Greenland would melt, with business as usual continued burning all fossil fuels all the way through to 2200, reaching 5 times our current coal use. Coal produces the most CO2 of all the fossil fuels by 2100, and then continuing all the way through to 2200. If we did that, then all the ice in Greenland would melt by year 3000. Even then, how is that a world that is too hot for humans? Even then, even with business as usual all the way through to 3000, it simply makes no sense. Now, it is possible for some areas of the world to get too hot for humans, and that can happen at starting about 5 degrees C, but it's possible, it's uncomfortable. And if you're in the paddy fields in China at about 4 or 5 degrees C, and in the hottest part of the Middle East, you wouldn't, there'd be restrictions on being energetic out of doors and farming the paddy fields, not all the year round, but during the hottest heat waves. Then for some few days in the hottest heat waves, you'd have to stay at home, and your farmer wouldn't be able to go out and spend as much as 6 hours working in the paddy field, because paddy fields are very humid. So we can take very hot temperatures when it's dry, but when it's humid we can't. But as the world warms up, then if it's very humid, generally that's associated with lots of clouds. And so you don't normally get the combination of very hot with very humid, and it takes until about 4 to 5 degrees centigrade before it's hot enough for that combination to set up to such an extent that some areas during the hottest heat waves are too hot for humans. And even then, it's only if you're working for 6 hours. So it's more like 7 degrees C, which we no way we're going to get to that, even with business as usual this century. Then at 7 degrees centigrade, then you start having areas where just staying at home is not possible unless you have some kind of air conditioning to cool your house down. So at that point, then some parts of the hottest part of the world, then you'd be dependent on technology just to be alive there. But then we are dependent on technology in other places, like you wouldn't last long in Antarctica without some form of heating. And then in the ISS you wouldn't last long at all without a lot of technology. So we certainly can live in places where you require technology. So even at 7 degrees centigrade, then there would be places where people needed technology to live there. That doesn't mean there would be nobody there, but probably a large part of the population would move, and you'd have farmers, and you'd still be able to grow crops. They're developing crops that are better at hot and hotter temperatures. So, and over the period of time, if we did, but business usually isn't going to happen, so I don't think I need to go on too much about that. But just to say, it's very theoretical. But meanwhile, the higher latitudes are warming up, are becoming more habitable for growing crops. We're growing crops further north than they could before, and that's going to continue, and it's more and more. And we actually are growing more food with every year. As the population increases, the food we produce is increasing faster than the population increases. So our food security is increasing at the moment. Every year we have more food surplus than we had the previous year. And we are doing a lot of work on crop varieties that are okay with higher temperatures. There's also work on a very high yielding form of rice, but this will take a decade or so to develop, but it's a reasonable possibility that if you could take the genes for the way that maize fixes carbon dioxide, if you could put that into rice, the rice would be able to withstand higher temperatures and be much more productive. And so, but it's a very complex, not just one gene, there's loads and loads of genes that you have to try and get all working in maize, in rice. And so it's a very complex thing to do. But there's a map to do it, but this is like a big project, like a moonshot type project, but they are working on it, and we may have that by the 2030s. But meanwhile, there are lots of varieties of rice that are much more heat tolerant and that are able to deal with salty soils and so on just by breeding it. And we've got lots of wild varieties of rice and in our seed collections, and using those and interbreeding and with the varieties we have, and every year the rice can withstand a higher temperature than the previous year through this constant. It's what they call the Green Revolution. It's been going on since the 50s, I think. And better ways of agriculture, proper use of fertilizer, irrigation, so as it gets drier, drip irrigation uses much less water. India is very big on drip irrigation. So there's lots and lots of stuff going on. And Africa, which will have the biggest population increase, and it's the most, we can make the most biggest difference by reducing child mortality, increasing the education level, increasing prosperity, then we can help Africa, because the population naturally levels off and then eventually declines if you have a prosperous people. So, and with very low mortality, because people then don't feel they need to have lots of children. And so Africa, but even in the worst case where Africa has a fourfold increase, it's still only got a similar population to India or China in a much larger area. And the agriculture in Africa is very inefficient. Some of it is a tenth of the efficiency of the same kind of agriculture in China or in the United States. But they have their own native crops, their own native way of doing things, and it needs a green revolution in Africa. And it's easily possible to have a fourfold increase in the productivity of Africa, which would more than account for the increase in population if we do have that increase. But it's possible that it isn't that big, and it's possible the population maximizes by 2050. That's quite possible, maybe at 9 billion, another 1 and a bit billion, but it may be an extra 3 billion, go all the way up to 10, 11 billion, that is especially if Africa is less prosperous and there's more inequality and more poor people in Africa, then it's more likely to go all the way up to 11 billion. Africa is the key for the population growth, but we can certainly feed everyone. There's no doubt about that. The main question is, do we do it in a way that is biodiversity preserving? As I said, you can feed everyone from the desert if you need be, with technology. Even if the entire world was desert, we could still feed everyone. We could feed them from floating farms in the seas, if we did that in a big way. And we could indeed migrate from land into the sea, entire population of the earth. It's highly hypothetical. You could do a science fiction story about it, where the entire world population, you get these stories about people emigrating into space and leaving Earth to go natural. You could emigrate into the seas, and we could feed the entire world several times over from the seas with floating farms, mainly just using seawater like the saltwater greenhouses and the air, and then just leave the land areas to nature. And these floating things in the middle of the seas, far from the coastline, so you don't impact the coastal ecosystems, and they can be designed to enhance the habitability of the oceans too. So you get creatures that would only normally live near the coast, actually living underneath the bottom of your floating farms in the sea. So that's another, if you want a hypothetical idea, we could feed several times the world's population from floating farms in the sea, kelp seaweed farms for our fuel, for plastics and things, and then floating, I just mean an agriculture, not just seaweed, but just agriculture, just farms, like we have farms on the land, but those farms are floating in the sea. There's no reason why you can't have that. And they're built on platforms that are floating in the sea. And then you just grow the same things you grow on the land. But you've got much more land area in the sea because most of the Earth's surface is sea. And that is a feasible thing. Some people, that's not just me saying that, there are people researching into that. And there's some people who are kind of promoting this idea, not the idea of everyone moving into the sea, but using the sea as for farms as a way to reduce the pressure on the land. But in principle, we could just all move into the sea. But not living in the sea, but living on the sea in these floating farms. I just say that. I'm not saying we should do that, but I'm saying that this shows how, with our technology, you get people talking about colonizing Mars or colonizing the Moon. We don't need to do that. There are loads of places on the Earth. There's several planets, Earth, land areas worth of planets, in terms of colonizing the sea. And there's no way, nothing is, so that takes me out to our next thing. Nothing is going to make us extinct. There's, you get all these hypothetical ideas. So this is where our sun is. Now, if we were in the center of the galaxy, like there, close to the central big hole, this is just an artist's impression. Obviously, we don't have a photograph of our galaxy from above. We can't get up there. It's that would take millions of years journey for our spacecraft to get to a position where it could take this photograph. Maybe sometime, 5 or 10 million years from now, we might have an actual photograph from this position. After someone decides they want to send a spacecraft and it spends millions of years to get there, or at the speed of, if they get close to the speed of light, it could be a little bit faster. It could be hundreds of thousands of years to get there, but it's nowhere near possible just now. But anyway, so that's the sun, is somewhere there. So this, we know about this from looking within the galaxy, and we can see a very long way, and we can work out how far away the things are that we see. We know the area around the sun very well, and then we can actually tell quite a lot about even the other side. So, but it's very obscured, looking through the dust in the middle. So, so there's this big black hole in the centre, and it jets up into space. If you're very, very close to that, it would be dangerous, but there's so much dust and gas in between, we are in no danger at all from that black hole. And if we were living in the centre of the galaxy, and there are lots of stars there, and there will be Earth-like planets there, so any extraterrestrial, if they did evolve there, then again, so like the rainforest frogs, so there may be extraterrestrials that live in the centre of the galaxy, and then if they find their planet is regularly, that they're surrounded by all sorts of dangers, all sorts of things happening that could endanger their planet. But we are way out in the suburbs of the galaxy, and there's very little that can endanger us here. There's occasional supernova, but all the supernova candidates are far too far away to harm us. We now know they're very rare anyway, out where we are. But we now know that we've got such good telescopes now. We know the region around us big enough for those. Same for gamma ray bursts. There are only 3 candidates for those, and they are pointed away from us, and also far too far away to do more than minor effects, but they are also pointed away from us, so we don't need to worry about those. And probably only one of them is a really good candidate. The other 2 probably aren't going to be gamma ray bursts. And even that one that's a good candidate very well might not be. Whenever it does it, probably millions of years in the future, we don't know when. So, and that, you look at other things. So I've talked a lot about asteroids. Nowadays, they found so many of the big ones that the focus now is on small ones. The big ones, like you see in the movies, some of them are just far too big, unrealistically big, it's impossible. And even the ones that are more realistic and still very big, we found all the ones of the dinosaur size. And we found 95% of the ones that are 1/10 of the diameter, that's 1,000th of the mass of the dinosaur extinction one. We've got 95% of the ones that are 1,000th of the mass of the dinosaur one. And it's very unlikely. The last one, even at that size, 1,000th of the mass, was 700,000 years ago. So you can see that pretty rare. And you can also see from that that the old ancient hominids, without any technology, with hardly any technology, they had primitive tools, stone tools, before Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, because it walked upright, and it could make very primitive stone tools. And you find their stone tools amongst the tektites that are thrown up by this impact crater, from impact 700,000 years ago by a rock about 1,000th of the mass of the dinosaurs. Those are very rare, and the next one is likely hundreds of thousands of years in the future. And we found 95% of them, and it's no surprise to find that none of those 95% have any chance of hitting us this century. Well, there's a minute chance in 2880, but chances are that that one also, it's not going to hit then. It's very unlikely it does. It's probably hundreds of thousands of years before that one hits. And so we don't need to worry about even the 1 kilometre ones, extraordinarily unlikely, and we do know how to deflect them too. So unlike the dinosaurs, we can deflect these things. And the long period comets, they're exceedingly rare. The things like Hale-Bopp or whatever, they pass through our solar system quite often, But the solar system is vast, 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 vast. It's hard to imagine how vast the solar system is. And the closest any of these has come was Lexell's comet 1770, 6 times the distance of the Moon. And that's very far away. We get the asteroids and near-Earth objects and sort of failed comets. They go past much closer than that, and sometimes they come close to the Moon. But this one was the closest one was centuries ago, 6 times distance from the Moon. Apart from a one that was about 30 meters, there was a little chunk of a sun-grazing comet that passed by, again several times the distance from the Moon, a little bit closer. And we wouldn't have known about that. So if it weren't for much better technology. But so their focus is on small asteroids, and you can die of a small asteroid, but it is extraordinarily unlikely. The last, you talk about a few per century die of asteroids. Nowadays, even the small ones, we'll find most of them in advance, so you get a warning. So if you were a reindeer herder in Siberia in 1908 and they had modern technology, you'd have your mobile phone and you get an alert on your mobile phone saying you've got to get out of there, or you'd be reading Google News and say, are you a reindeer herder at such and such a location in Tunguska? And you'd look and say, yes, I am. And they said, get out, because this thing is going to hit in the next couple of days. And it'll give you the exact minute that you've got to be out of there for. That's the world we're in at the moment. And nowadays even reindeer herders tend to have mobile phones, and smartphones, and connection to the internet. So there is still a possibility we don't spot them all in advance. Not quite got to that yet. But your risk is absolutely minute, your personal risk. Far less than for lightning, far less even than for the very rare death by hailstone, which few people know anyone who's died by lightning, and hardly anyone knows anyone who's been killed by a hailstone. It does happen. It last happened in the United States in the year 2000. So it does happen. Well, we're talking about something much rarer than that, something that has never happened to anyone in the United States in recorded history. One lady did get her thigh very badly bruised by a meteorite in the United States. Very serious. Needing help from hospital and so on. But nobody has died of an asteroid in the United States. Or meteorite. I'm including the small meteorites because those can harm you, but not very small ones, but medium-sized ones. The risk is absolutely minute. So, and then I looked in this article, I looked at other things that could make us extinct, and there's just, that's the comet thing. Jupiter protects us from comets. It breaks them up. This is an example. That was the comet, what do you call it? Not Comet Swift-Tuttle, comet, what's it called again? Schumacher-Levy. Jupiter broke it up on a previous flyby, so it breaks big comets up into small ones, and then all the small bits hit Jupiter on another flyby, and so that's another comet crossed off the list that can't hit Earth. So that's part of the reason Jupiter protects us from lots of them. And anyway, I'll talk about all the different things there. I'm not going to talk about everything here. I'll put this link in the description. Let's see. Oh, I thought I had a picture of a midden here. Well, never mind. I don't need to find it. I seem to. I thought I had one. Anyway, so the yes, that was just about how the early humans, they lived on the seashore and they ate shellfish. Anyway, so yes, so now I was going to go on to this article. So I'll put links to these 4 articles in the video description, so do have a read of them. And this is the one that I did that helps people who are very scared about climate change, and it's about how in the future we do have a future, and it is called the future of nature and wonder, and that your children could grow up to that. And think that you can certainly have children. Don't feel that the future is going to be a dire one, that you can't bring children into the world. Your children can be part of the first zero carbon, biodiversity preserving, sustainable generation. We are working together to make this happen, and young children are especially empowered and keen to make this happen. And so your children will be joining a generation where obviously everyone's not going to be the same, but there's a very high prevalence of young children who are working towards that as much as they can as a child. And so in another 10 years, then our current 10-year-olds will be adults who are working, working, as I said, with all their ability to bring about this sustainable, renewable, biodiversity preserving future. So if the older foggies like myself aren't doing it enough, then the next generation, then you could have these new politicians and new engineers and scientists who are going to be doing this. And if you have children, you're bringing up children who are going to be part of this new generation and new way of doing things that we're all already seeing. And some of the more elderly politicians are a bit slow in coming over to this new way of thinking. Some of them aren't, some of them are quite fast, but some of them are quite a bit slow at coming over to these new ideas. And the young people tend to be a little bit more flexible quite often. Not, there are exceptions, you can be very young at heart and be in your 80s, but and very flexible and take on new ideas. And so this is my video about that. I've talked about, so yes, this is about biodiversity. So so this is just lots of ways of, so you can read this article and go into detail. So first of all, I'll start, so yes, our generation of children are headed for a world with nature and wonder in it, and their children too. And so I'll just read out my first bit. It's so sad when people think they can't have children because of climate change. 2 years ago, it would now be another year or two since then. Most of these people, it's still, even going back before 2018, even 3 years ago, I think most of these people weren't despairing. They didn't even give it thought. Climate change was not an election issue in the US elections in 2017 or the UK elections in 2017. So you're talking about 2018, so it is still really 2 years ago. Now it's one of the top issues for most governments worldwide. And it gives us so much hope for the future, for those who've been following it all along. For many of those who have just begun to give it serious attention for a couple of years are already despairing. Only 3 years, it's now 5 years after the Paris Agreement. It's all topsy-turvy. The underlying situation hasn't changed significantly. Scientists knew all of this in less detail decades ago. 1970s started. We start to do something about it in a serious way, and for the first time, many people feel like giving up. Meanwhile, people are living longer. Our population is levelling off due to prosperity, not scarcity. Literacy is increasing. Food security increasing, as I said. As the population grows, we're growing more food, even more than the population is increasing. Child mortality going down, greatly reduced poverty, access to clean water increasing. Things are improving in so many ways, and with roadmaps for the future, we know that we can continue to do this. It just needs the political will. All the way through to 2100 and beyond, we can do this. And says they're going, for goodness sake, we're only 3 years into the 14 years from 2016 to 2030, we're now 4 years, when we need to reduce emissions by 45% to stay within 1.5C, and 34 years for when we need to reach zero emissions, and that's for the easiest way to reach 1.5C. We have already knocked more than a degree off the projection for 2100. We're down to 3 degrees C in just 3 years. Then we're down, it's now below 3 degrees C, and with the next agreement in 2026, then 120 nations, and this, at the moment it's half the world GDP and a quarter of the world's CO2 emissions are expected to be pledged to be 1.5C compatible by in the next round of pledges. That's including some towns and companies and things that are also going to join, even though they can't officially. So it's really gaining momentum hugely, and we don't know what China's going to do, but China could make a huge difference even if it pledged for 3 degrees C, because it produces so much of the world's CO2. That would give us a very big margin, because we then have to increase the pledges in 2025 and 2030, and it really hardly matters what the United States does in terms of the larger picture for at least 5, maybe 10 years. It would be great if the United States does rejoin, but if it just continues doing its own thing, it's reducing emissions, it's not increasing. There are many states, I think there are now 4 states in the United States that have 1.5C compatible aims, starting with California. I forget the other 3. And written down somewhere, but I've forgotten it now. I blogged about it, I think. And the entirety of Europe is heading for 1.5C compatible in the United Kingdom. And it's just spreading and spreading and increasing. If you think all of that in just 5 years, what are we going to do in another 5 years? That's how to think about it. We never thought we'd get all the way to 1.5C. In fact, I don't think the people in the Paris Agreement would have expected us to get so far in just 5 years. Then we got to another 5 years, and another 5 years, and then at that point we have to reduce by 45% after another 2 more things from now. The next one in 2025 will be very important as well. But that's another 5 years for renewables to increase. As you reduce the price of renewables, then it makes more and more sense to do renewables power stations. And then as renewables get cheaper and cheaper, then even your existing fossil fuels, so once you've built a renewables power station, then it just doesn't, then it's just producing electricity from then on with very little running. But with fossil fuels, then if you create a fossil fuels power station, then so I'll just quickly show that fossil fuels thing. Or did I show you? I can't remember, I had it open, but I'm not sure if I actually said it. So that is how much, I don't think I actually said it, I forgot. That is how much solar panels you need to produce all the electricity the world needs. You need a bit more for the actual power in the world, just from solar power. And the solar panels can be built in deserts, they can be built on the roofs of houses, they can be built in covered car parks, they can be put in fields, sheltering the animals, and in many places it actually helps to shade the ground to keep it a little bit cooler and damper. So they can be interused with agriculture, they can be used in brownfield areas, and they can now be built floating in the sea as well. That's beginning to take off. And they can be used with hydroelectric dams and double the amount of the hydroelectric dam by putting it on the dam, and then we can balance solar power with peaking power, which is generally hydro storage. I got a long article about that. The renewables, many countries are showing by doing that we can power the entire world with renewables. Wind power has almost no land footprint. And then when you get people saying, but you've got to take account of making all the solar panels and making all the wind towers and so on. Remember that for fossil fuels, you have to make all the drilling platforms. and you have to make the tankers. And the tankers are made to be very renewable. You also, and so we can do, and we are doing the same with renewables, very recyclable. And then you have to have all the military vessels protecting the tankers. So the United States spends billions of dollars protecting its oil imports. And that's so an army is very expensive and very high using very high use of resources. And so being able to reduce the amount of resources that your army needs because you haven't got oil imports to protect. So you've got to take account of all that. Renewables don't need any imports apart from the actual materials to make it. So we can certainly, and we can do everything with renewables. There's no doubt about it. There's loads of probably carefully worked out plans for different countries, like United Kingdom has a plan, Europe has a plan, California has a plan. So it can be done, definitely. And this is the idea, and it's not true that fossil fuels are the best for the amount of energy you get back for the amount you put in. Nowhere near. There's even wind turbines, you can see there, are roughly the same as oil and gas. And then photovoltaic is there, and these are improving. This was quite a while back. They're getting better at it. So now I just want to go to talk a little bit about. I might do a separate video about this, but so I'll end with this one. I don't maybe do a shorter one somehow. But this is to show. So some people get the idea that the Amazon is going to turn into a desert. It's more like it's going to turn out something more like that once you have it in equilibrium. But and then if you have all the things that are with climate change, without the farmers cutting it down, but just if we go up to 3 degrees C and higher, then parts of the Amazon stay all the way through and don't just change, but parts of it are likely to start to dry out a bit, and then we turn more like that, still trees, but much less of the actual forest compared with what it is now. But we can stop that. We should be able to stop well below that. In fact, we're already heading for below 3C, and we should be able to start. I would be surprised if we go above 2C myself. What was that about? Oh yes, this was about my sister's bedroom on Sky, and it's just showing that she keeps sheep, and this is when they're not grazing, and it's just showing that she says that she's getting the grass growing much more than she thinks, and it wouldn't be at all surprising because of the longer growing season we have with the warmer, wetter winter, and this is happening all across, as I said, all across the higher latitudes. That you have actually more, as long as you've got plenty of rain. I'm on the west coast of Scotland, we have loads and loads of rain, so we don't have drought problems at all. But if you do have drought problems, then you have to have irrigation to deal with that. India has shown, like India, we're nowhere near India levels of droughts. Even in our worst summers, we're never going to be like that. So we can certainly, the monsoon to the dry season, we don't have that kind of distinction. But because we're not used to it, you get farmers grumbling and saying, oh, we can't grow tomatoes anymore. It's going to be impossible because of the droughts in the summer. It is possible, you just have to do the irrigation properly and storing water for the summer. So if you do that, then yes, we can definitely cope with the increasing droughts that we will get with climate change in the summer. But we need more irrigation to deal with that. Then the higher latitudes are producing a lot more crops as a result of the longer growing season. What is that? It's not going to change to a desert. And then coral reefs, and this was just, I'll turn the sound down on my speaker, so just so you can see a video of the corals. So, this is not corals. This is
Coming up next on Jonathan Bird's Blue World, Jonathan explores the biology of sponges, and you might be surprised at what he finds.
This, so I didn't need to click on it. Let's just have that running for a while.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Bird, and welcome to my world.
It's just talking, I don't know what that's about. But there's more sponges in there.
After days or weeks at sea, when the boat was full of sponges, they were taken to shore where they were auctioned to the highest bidder.
Just I don't know what that says. Since I watched this, but corals don't just turn. I see some more spongy things.
Like fans to move water through the sponge. The water brings in nutrients and oxygen while it carries out waste and carbon dioxide. Second, the sticky collars of the collar cells pick up tiny bits of planktonic food brought in with the water. Sponges are very effective filter feeders since they're able to capture and eat particles as small as bacteria as well as larger particles. They might not look like they're doing much, but a simple demonstration shows how effectively sponges can pump water. On a reef in the Caribbean, I make a dive with a syringe filled with a non-toxic dye called fluorescein. By squirting it around the base of some sponges, we can observe how the water is moving by watching what the dye does.
There was a plan at one point to mine the Great Barrier Reef.
Within only seconds, the dye is pumped through the sponges along with the water. As you can see, a sponge is a pretty good water pump.
There is no Great Barrier Reef now, because the whole thing was mined and made this
water pump, and also a good strainer. Any plankton that goes in with the water won't come back out through the osculum.
I think it was the 70s, 60s or 70s.
Tube sponges are even more spectacular to observe. They pump the dye so furiously that they look like a collection of miniature smokestacks.
The argument was that most of it is dead, which is true, because the corals are they're just chalk inside. They're just whatever it is, not chalk, but whatever it is. Anyway, it's basically like chalk. It's like limestone inside. It's like this stuff used for cement, and it is absolutely true that most of the physical body of the reef is dead, but it turns out to be one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, and it's got very high biomass, despite most of it really being dead, not like trees.
The ultimate test is a hefty barrel sponge.
Trees,
what will a big monster like this do?
It's just a very thin layer around the trunk. The interior is just support.
It takes a few seconds for the dye to work its way through the sponge.
In the interior of the trees. A coral reef is a bit like that.
Wait for it.
So, anyway, so that is rather.
But then it pours out like smoke from a chimney. That's pretty good pumping from those tiny little collar cells.
They didn't know about all that. They hadn't done a biological survey until they'd drawn up these plans to just mine the barrier reef and turn it into foundations and sell it. They thought, oh, we're a great way of earning a lot of money for Australia. Just mine away the Great Barrier Reef. And then this was a serious plan. And that started.
Since sponges can't get together to reproduce, they spawn in a way similar to coral. The sperm is released into the water column by the male sponge.
But they're still going to go ahead and do it. And the biologists stopped them.
It finds its way to the female sponges where fertilization occurs internally. Eventually, the planktonic larvae are released from the female sponge and float around in the water column as plankton for only a few days. Then they settle down and start growing. Sponges don't have many predators. There's not much nutritional value in a sponge, and they're hard to digest. Hence, very few animals can eat sponges. But something was clearly eating this sponge. A sea turtle is the culprit. Sea turtles are one of the principal predators of sponges, along with a few species of fish and some invertebrates like nudibranchs.
They evolved, and how quickly they evolved.
Sponges might not be very exciting, and they certainly don't have much personality, but they're an ancient animal that has been living in the oceans for at least 500 million years. They can't crawl around or swim, but they're very good at reproducing and feeding themselves by pumping water. So, chances are sponges will continue to populate the oceans longer than people will populate the Earth.
Something like that. But it's not. We can enter well below 2 degrees C. If we do that, then although there might be lots of coal bleaching, eventually the coal will adjust to the new temperatures. Everywhere in the world where there's coal, there's other coals somewhere else that's already adjusted to the warmer temperature it's going to experience, except in the Red Sea, where due to some accident of history and geology, it is already pre-adjusted to a higher temperature. So the Red Sea, paradoxically, though very hot, is it the Red Sea? I think it is, yes, Red Sea coals. Then it's going to, they are pre-adjusted to be alright, to 2 degrees C, 3 degrees C and beyond. And then there's some coals in the Great Barrier Reef that are already fine for 2 degrees or 3 degrees C as well. Certain branching coals even. So in the final community, then you'd end up having a mix of sponges and seaweeds, and you might have your occasional coal here that's already pre-adjusted for some reason to high temperatures. So the coals, they're rather strange. They're very, very sensitive to a very slight increase in temperature. Even there's some coals in Australia that have a huge range of several degrees, huge for coals, of several degrees in temperature, and yet if you look at the highest temperature and you just increase that just by 1 degree, then it's hard for it to cope, even though it can deal with the entire range. They just get very comfortable with their particular niche and just don't like being pushed any out of it, even slightly, even when it's one with big temperature swings. They still can't push up a little bit. They're very different from land animals in that respect, and land trees and things where generally there's quite a long wide range, and it's just the warm edge where it's a problem. And the ones in the middle have a very wide range of ability because you get the same species spread over a very large area. I suppose it's because coals don't migrate very easily, and so each coral reef has its own species of coal, and it's minutely different from the other one that's even 100 miles away, and so they're very fine-tuned to where they live. And but so it's a big mystery. We just don't know how quickly or slowly they're going to adapt. But it's thought that if we went to 2 degrees C by 2050, it would be likely too fast, although there are some encouraging signs that maybe it wouldn't be too fast for some of the coals. So there's a mixed views and ideas there as to what would happen. But if we can stay well within 2 degrees C, then and the other thing people don't realise, that coals get destroyed by things like the crown of thorns starfish eats large amounts of coals in great waves every few years, and then they recover again, and the whole thing grows back. So as long as part of the coral reef remains, then once it's equilibrated to the new temperature, it'll then grow back. So that's why when they say, at 1.5 degrees C, 5% of the coals would be left, and that doesn't mean they're permanently gone. But when you go to 2 degrees C, so much is gone that it's very difficult for them to grow back. So yes, and then there we go. The yes, it's about the insects. So you talk about Puerto Rico. They said insect collapse, and it turned out they made a big mistake in the study, and the Puerto Rican insects were actually increasing. And yet we have these headline news stories. You can go and search Puerto Rican insect. I bet if you search Puerto Rican insects, I've never tried this, just this particular first Puerto Rican insects. I bet you'll get saying that Google's saying it's going to collapse. are they disappearing? Insect collapse will be destroying our life system. Here's what devastating Puerto Rican's insect populations. You would never guess from those stories that actually the Puerto Rican insects are increasing. It was just a mistake. Someone made a mistake with their study, an understandable mistake. They hadn't realised that the very first figures in their study were after a hurricane, which had created lots of gaps in the forest, which increased the amount of insects. So all they were seeing was that, and if there'd been a hurricane at the end, they'd have said there's a big increase. It just so happened that all they were discovering was the way that insects increased by hurricane damage. And this was reported as that the insects decreased with warmth, which was just not true at all. Just a bit of a mistake, they weren't quite thorough enough. And then there was this study where this was reported worldwide, saying that the insects would be extinct worldwide in 40 years. This is another thing, like humans going extinct. It literally does not make sense. You couldn't have a world without insects. I mean, what's going to happen to all the dung piling up in the fields where you've got your cows? You just got dung going up and up and up until the field is covered in dung and nothing eats it. And, dead birds, nothing happens to them. The landscape is piled up with dead birds and there are no insects to eat them, and trees not rotting, and trees start rotting and no insects go into the rotting wood. It simply makes no sense at all that we could have a world without insects, and a warmer world typically has more insects. A drier world has less. So it's a combination of the two. But as I said, like for instance, the growing season is increasing in the northern latitudes. It's not the warming that is causing insects to disappear in Germany, to be reduced, not disappear, they're not going to go away, but be reduced. It's things like insecticide, and they are solving it by and modern agricultural methods, and they're solving it by using things like wildflower strips in fields around the edges. Nowadays they put a wildflower strip often through the middle of a field as well, which also helps with the pests of the crops, as it so happens. And then so they do encouraging insects in lots of ways. You can make a bug hotel, very easy to make a bug hotel. Just a little pile of wood with bits of holes in it. I've got a picture of one here somewhere. And then the insects would definitely, you could stop all the problems with insects declining because of insecticides. But if you're looking at warmth, then the northern latitudes, if anything, would have more insects in a warmer world. And in the tropics, you won't be very surprising that Costa Rica, that the tropical jungle would have less insects as it warms up. And it turns out it doesn't, it has more. So it's only really situations where it's warming plus drying, and then you have some reduction of insects. And when you talk about ones that are but changing different species and so on, when you're talking about insects needed for agriculture as well, so people worry about domestic bees. Domestic bees will never go extinct, and they are increasing worldwide. And the reason is, it's just like worrying about sheep going extinct. You can split a hive and make 2 hives of domestic bees. You just don't need to, they're not going to go extinct. And they are increasing. And even with the colony collapse disorder, they understand that better now, but even at its worst, then they could still deal with the collapsed colonies by just splitting healthy colonies again and making more each year for the next year. So then there was this really very low quality study. It did get peer review and published, but it was incredibly low quality compared with, and this hit all the headlines. See that blue figure for China, and the blue figure for the only grey areas were the only bits they knew anything about in the study. A little bit of Australia and the whole of China. That is the domestic honeybee. That's like having looking at a study of risks of decline and extinction of mammals, and looking at pigs in China, and seeing whether the number of pigs in China is increasing or decreasing. And if the number of pigs in China goes down, you say that the mammals in China are at risk of extinction. It was utterly, really very strange thing that passed peer review. I don't know how they could have included a domestic honeybee and it passed peer review as being about insect decline. And this hit the headlines throughout the world as being the big story. Meanwhile, if I got it down here, that's about splitting the honeybee hives. All this will be in the description of this video. So then that's the FAO. I say FAO stat anyway. The FAO report came out only a week or two later, and this was particularly about the pollinators of crops and insects associated with agriculture, including pasture. And do I have the big graph there? No, I don't. But they looked they looked at this is an example of stingless bees in Malaysia, so the main thing that they did see is a possibility of reduction of biodiversity of pollinators. So if you still get the flowers pollinated, but if you have a variety of different pollinators, more of the flowers get pollinated. So there's a somewhat of an effect there of if you reduce the biodiversity of the pollinators. But they found, looking worldwide, so that was people worried about, fewer insects mean you won't get crops. Many crops aren't insect pollinated anyway. But they look worldwide. Then they didn't see a decreasing insects. They found a very mixed trend. Some with a mix of some increasing, some decreasing, some increasing, some decreasing, some steady. And there were many, the only worldwide trend they saw was a reduction of insects in grazing land. But that is going down worldwide. But in other forests, cropland and so on, they didn't see a consistent pattern. And this is far more thorough. They had reports from all the UN nations, people actually experts in those countries, sending them in information saying this is what we've spotted in our country by way of the insects. And so this was far more thorough, and yet it never hit the news at all. I didn't see a single news story about it. There was a news story about the FAO study which got it all wrong and made it seem like a dire thing, and the actual mention of the insects was not mentioned. It was quite a large part of the study. It was a big comprehensive study, and insects were a significant part of it, maybe a quarter of it or something. Very big study of Food and Agricultural Organization. That got almost no attention. And this ridiculous thing, I mean, it did pass peer reviews, presumably there's something of interest in it, but it didn't deserve the huge publicity it got, and with people, what you call it, members of Parliament in the United Kingdom using it when they're talking about climate change, as if it was an established fact that we risk insects going extinct in 40 years. It's not true at all. No truth to it. And that wasn't even, the paper didn't say they're going extinct in 40 years, but the people who wrote this, they, in off-the-cuff remarks, said that. That's a bug hotel. This is about the greening of the earth, and this is about the way that China and greened the lowest plateau, and all sorts of other projects, and about how we are becoming more and more about our biodiversity, how we are doing so much to preserve biodiversity. I think I better stop soon, but you can have a read of this yourself. And lots of stuff there. I don't think I would just. I've already gone over now. I was trying to learn how to talk short, and I need all these mistakes in the media. Anyway, I'll stop now. Just a reminder of our Facebook group, Doomsday Debunked, where we fact check stories that scare you, and there are lots of people there, lots of other fact checkers, and you do join it, especially and if you can help with that fact checking, and also if you're scared. And you remind the channel, like and subscribe, usual thing. If you want to see more of this, then do join and subscribe to the channel.